I can't speak highly enough to having a mentor or coach or somebody that holds you accountable, sees your company outside of your company, and can give you perspective. I'm just a huge fan of that.
Friends, I'm excited to introduce you yet another guest who is a rock star in advising decamillionaires and those who are striving to be decamillionaires. You know, this mindset around decamillionaire is something that's not for the faint of heart. And part of my passion is bringing about experts who are in the trenches every single day, helping folks like yourself battle the right battles and ultimately persevere, ultimately gain ground and achieve the status. And my guest today is no stranger to working with experts, as well as those individuals who've achieved decamillionaire status and those who are rapidly on their way. So with that introduction, let me introduce you to my guest, Mr. Jake Falcon. How are you, sir?
Justin, what an introduction. Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Ever since my team interviewed you and your team and the wisdom that you have, the 20 years of experience of being in the trenches, I cannot wait to unpack this conversation. I feel like from your bio, from your website, from everything that I know about you, they're like a brother from another mother. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. But before we go much further, who is Jake Falcon?
Well, thank you, Justin. Again, I'm excited to be on your show. And I agree. I think we have a lot of alignment here. So about myself, I was born in Kansas City, kind of bounced around a little bit, grew up in West Texas, went to college at University of Texas, San Antonio. I've got a bachelor's in business, moved back to Kansas City in 2006. That's when I started my career in finance. So again, this is my 19th year practicing as a wealth advisor. And today I'm the CEO of a wealth management company. Today we serve clients in 35 states. We have 800 clients. I've had thousands and thousands and thousands of meetings about retirement planning, working with business owners and corporate executives. And I've got a team of 16 of us because as you know, you can't do it alone. And that's who I am. That's what I do. I love, obviously, I don't consider what I do work. It's play for me. Play in a serious, like it's an infinite game. Like I'm not trying to like grind through something. This is what I love. This is my profession, what I love doing. What's work for me is golf. I do play a lot of golf, and I'm not very good at it. So that's oftentimes I'd rather be right here in my office than on the golf course. But here I am.
I hear you, Jake. You know, I play squirrel golf. I don't know if you ever played squirrel golf before. I'm really good at teeing off and hitting everything in the trees on both sides of the fairway.
It happens. I've been there.
You know, what's interesting is the numbers you just gave out. A practice of the size and the success that you've had, you're no stranger to success. And I want to go back to the early days because you and I I could ascertain what the value of your firm is right now. And so you are already in the top 1% of financial advisors, which is why we're talking together at this particular point. So I want to go back to the early days. What was the mindset you had to have in the beginnings of here's ultimately where I want to go? What was that mindset that you had to unpack, and how has it been to maintain that mindset through almost 20 years of business ownership?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, actually. And it had to do with consistency and perseverance. Like we're in a white collar profession, but I am a very blue collar guy. And my parents raised me with this honesty, integrity, and hard work mentality. And Justin, when I got just a very small slice of success, and actually I wasn't a fast starter, believe it or not. I had to grind and grind and grind for months, even like years before I actually started to see the effect of my work compound and grow. But when I just started signing up 1 or 2 or 3 clients here and there, and I recognized that I was following a process and I trusted the process, then the sky was the limit. But it was really just, again, not treating like this is something I'm grinding through. I'm literally I'm 43 years old. And when I was a kid, Nintendo was popular, the original Nintendo. They have this video game, my wife bought it for me, called Wall Street Kid. I don't know if you ever heard of it. I played that. I have that game today, and I played that game. And you had to exercise, take your wife out, and manage money all in this video game. And that's the way I see my life today. And that's how I treated my career. And so it's this infinite game of building and creating. I'm an architect by personality type, not like that I want to do that for a living, but I like building processes and systems and building a practice. And that's what it's been. But it's a lot of consistency, 12-hour days, but it's having fun while I'm doing it.
So I'm interested. Consistency is not a word I've heard from many people who've reached success at the level you have, or who coach business owners on how they can strive to success. And as I'm hearing consistency, my mind goes to tying consistency and processes, or consistency and frameworks together. And I'm intrigued to this end. So Jake, when you go back 20 years ago, the processes that you started with are far different than they are today, just by pure, adaptation of business. What was the mindset you had in order to identify when a process was not working effectively, and now having to go back to that whiteboard and starting from scratch again and then move forward? What was that? I really want to hone in on your mindset, because what you just described is unique to what I see from ultra successful business owners. So help me unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, that's really good, because you're right. What they say is what got you here won't get you there, kind of thing. So you're right. But what never stopped was being consistent with a process. So you're right. In the beginning, when I was a rookie advisor, I literally cold called.
Yep.
Right. But as my client list and I started to have success, I didn't have time to cold call. So what I did is I hired someone to cold call for me. And now he's a part owner of my company, and he cold called. But then both of us got too busy. And so neither of us could cold call anymore. And so we have been constantly reinventing our processes as our team and our client base has grown. And I think I have a business coach, and he said something to the effect that if your business is growing at 50%, or whenever it grows at 50%, your systems will break and you have to come up with new systems. So I believe in the beginning, if you have a team member, or even if yourself, if something isn't working, first you have to check in with the process, and then you have to check in with the person. So my big role now, of course, I still advise and meet with clients, and I love doing that. I also am building processes for my team to follow. And then as we grow quickly, we're still growing quickly. When those processes inevitably break, I have to come up with new ones that will work for a bigger organization and a bigger client base.
I just heard three nuggets there, and I want to pack each of these individually. You said, first of all, you got out of your own way. You didn't use those terms, and I'm going to paraphrase what you said. We outgrew it, and so we had to hire somebody to take these so I could move up line. And then you talked about a business coach, and then you talked about process and people. And I want to dissect those three, if you don't mind, Jake. So
of course,
let's talk about the first one. So I often see business owners struggling with letting go of their baby, or their skill set, or their technical paralysis. What did you use in those early days as the catalyst to release? Was it a goal? Was it a burning desire? Was it just by the frustration that you were facing? What was the catalyst that moved you to release and let somebody else fill that in, so you move into a slightly different direction?
Yeah, Justin. Yeah, let's be clear here. I was really bad at letting go early on. And so to help your audience avoid my mistakes, I would give two pieces of advice. One is I would do something called a time energy audit. Have you heard of that?
I have, yes.
Yeah. So it's basically audit your day for 2 weeks. Every 15 minutes, audit it, put down what you're doing, and then you put dollar signs like they do at like restaurants, 1 to 4. 4 would be high impact, high revenue generation. And then on top of that, you highlight green or red, what do you enjoy doing and what do you not enjoy doing? And so after that, you've got the data. So now you know what are your high impact activities and what do you enjoy doing? And then I firmly believe in buying back your time. So the first thing you delegate are those low value activities you don't like doing. And it might be starting with an executive assistant. If you're a one-man show right now, one person show, like hire an executive assistant to check your emails and manage your calendar, right? And then maybe it's some of the delivery. If you're onboarding clients, if you're a service industry, like you and I, maybe you have somebody that does all the contracts and the onboarding and even the technical stuff with advising the clients, right? And then you move up to marketing, then you move up to sales and eventually leadership. So again, that's what I'm going through today that has been way more impactful than before. 19 years ago, I was shooting at the hip. This would work, then this wouldn't work, then this would work. So, but what I've really tried to focus on is where am I? This isn't like me trying to brag, but like anyone should say this, like, where are you world class and what drives a business forward? And that's what you should spend as much time in that zone as possible. And that's really what I've been focusing on as we kind of continue to reiterate Falcon Wealth Advisors, the name of my company, so that I can keep building up that ladder and then bringing in people that they own the things that I used to do and they're really good at it. And oftentimes, believe it or not, they're better at it than me. But the reality is, if they can be 80% as good at me as whatever I'm delegating, that's good enough. Because then you can kind of start leveling up and building out the team that way. No one's going to, like, in the end, if you're the founder, no one's going to probably care as much as you or work as hard as you. And you've got to be okay with that. So that's tough. It's a lot there, but that's the way I see it.
Well, what's interesting, first of all, is I know somebody who's influenced your life very well right now. I could name the name and we'll check it off here, but I know exactly. You just quoted this individual in 4 different aspects. So I know who you're
Right.
talking about. But interestingly enough, the time energy audit, I can remember the first time my coach wanted me to do that. And I thought he was crazy. I literally said, dude, you're smoking crack. That's like my word when you're loco type. And
Right.
he's like, no, I want you to do this every single day. So on the way home, I have a 45-minute drive, Jake. And he said, on the way home, I want you to pull your phone out and dictate what you did that day. Back in the time, we had this program called Copy Talk. Today, we might use Chat GPT, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. But so I was looking at it, and he would come back and he'd say, look, your hourly rate is X whenever you're in front of clients, and you're spending X number of time doing Y, which is a third of what your hourly rate could be. Why are you wasting your time and energy? And what's intriguing is now I have the privilege of coaching service-based business owners nationally, and they've never considered it. I can remember the first time I heard it. So when you're talking about a time energy audit, friends, I want you to pull in that nugget that Jake just mentioned. I personally have done that. I personally teach that. I believe who Jake's coach is. I know it's strong on what he's having to do now. In order for you to move up line, you're not going to be able to continue to do what you're doing now. You're going to have to move up line in terms of your activity, in terms of activity for dollar rate. Now, what's interesting, Jake, is as you're going, you said that if somebody else could be 80% of what you're currently maybe at 100%, then that gives you some capacity. I'm making the assumption that your business coach is talking into your mind regularly right now, because like I said, I strongly believe I think who it is, just based on what you're saying. But tell me when did you first hire a business coach, and how have they played in your success?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of coaching. So I read a ton. My wife, Justin, reads like 200 books a year. It's nuts.
Good for her.
And she's a good influence on me. I'm like up to, I think 12 or 15 a year, but I'm trying, right? So I read a ton of business books about self-improvement and coaching, but then I've had several coaches. So I'm just on my current edition, right? So and what's funny is I think they all say the same thing. They just say it differently. But I've had coaching for many, many years. And whether it's personal coaching or just to become a high performer, but I believe wholeheartedly in investing in yourself and investing in your team, because you need somebody that's actually out of your business to have that accountability, and they can see a completely different perspective. So I'm a big fan of coaching, and I'm happy to list them off, or maybe in the show notes, however you want to do it. But like, again, I can't speak highly enough to having a mentor or coach or somebody that holds you accountable, sees your company outside of your company, and can give you perspective. I'm just a huge fan of that.
Absolutely. And that's what you do day in, day out for the clients you have the privilege to serve.
Yes.
Is you're literally from the outside trying to help them see the circumstances that are facing. You're facing resistance, but you're trying to help them see, hey, here's how you're going to overcome this. Because as you mentioned, you've walked business owners and retirees through this process probably thousands of times in your 20 years sitting in the seat you're sitting in, whereas the individual you're coaching is probably the first time they're going through this.
Exactly.
And so by having that perspective, it allows you to really focus in on that third thing that I really want to hone in on, and that was processes and people. And I love those two words. Mr. Dan Martell focuses really heavy on processes and people. He has a great book called Buy Back Your Time.
Yep.
You know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
So help me understand your mindset between how you're scaling the practice, your company now, and how you help others scale their particular net worth through this mindset of process and people.
So here's the deal. As a business owner, the leader, whatever you want to call yourself, the manager, whatever, I get it. Like, I get frustrated when either sloppy mistakes happen or things don't get done, or even worse, like the client doesn't get taken care of the way that I feel they should get taken care of. And so the key, though, is it starts with the leader first, though. So my job as a leader is to make sure that we are building in processes so that we can hire people that can execute on those processes. So if mistakes happen now, what's allowed me to kind of lower some of that level of frustration is that I ask myself, is it a process problem or is it a people problem? So when I have group leaders, and again, I've got a pretty small team, there's 16 of us, but I have, a handful of group leaders. So when we see mistakes happening in their groups, I always start with like, well, what's the process, right? Do we have a process in place? Do we need to change the process? I want to start there versus pointing fingers and because I don't want to demotivate my team. And so I want them to understand that they're human. I know they're going to make mistakes, but if we can make checklist process, one big one that I got from Dan is videotaping or video, like using video on your computer. Like, this is how I want this done. And like literally video your screen. He says to do it 2 or 3 times. A lot of times I just do it once, but that way my teammates literally have a video of exactly how I want something technical done so that it's all right there. And all they have to do is show up and execute, because I would argue that's how I became successful. I had a mentor when I started in this business. He had a process he shared with me. I executed the process. And all I had to do was show up with enthusiasm, confidence, and do the work, and good things would happen. And that's what I want for my team.
Absolutely. So, what's interesting, Jake, is years ago, whenever I was scaling my businesses, and I know you can say the same thing, before modern AI and the power that we now have at our fingertip, I would literally take painstakingly and build a process with my yellow pad. I still use a yellow pad, friends, and my pen. That's just what I do. I would build a process, and then I would walk myself through that process 2 or 3 dozen times. I would whiteboard it into a wireframe. I'd get my team around, let them poke holes through it, and then we would implement, then sit back and figure out what's broke. Now with AI, I'm thinking of scribe.ai. It's a great tool that you can, for free just about, videotape everything you're doing, and it actually puts it into a workflow for you within a matter of minutes now.
Nice.
Whereas before you and I had to painstakingly go through this for hours. What's interesting to me though, Jake, is as I'm talking to individuals who are like, hey, I'm trying to break through, I'm trying to reach Decamillionaire status, is there's this mindset of I'm stuck. I can't figure out how to get out of my own way. And I want to pull us back to belief. I may use the word faith as a Christian, that's the word I use. Other people might use the word belief. So as you were scaling this business, I'm sure you had a certain destination. Perhaps even now, where you're at right now, the size of your firm is nothing to sneeze at. It's a good firm for the financial industry. You probably have this destination out in front of you trying to achieve. But what is that belief that you have within you that allows you to break through that resistance that so many of our brothers and sisters on the front line to fall prey to? What is that for you personally?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, you have to get comfortable with the unknown. And I believe people get confidence, though, when they continuously show up for themselves. So whatever promises you make for yourself, whether it's going to be, Dan, reading 10 pages a day or working out every day or whatever it's going to be, if you can start consistently showing up for yourself every day based on those promises, then you'll start to achieve confidence. And then you have to understand that another coach I had talks about controlling the controllable, right? So, and you've probably talked about this, I'm sure, a ton also, Justin. But again, I know that if I control these certain, indicators or whatever it is, that I think based on that, the outcome should be in my favor, then that's all you can do. But you have to be comfortable with the unknown and just, show up every day, fulfill the promises you make to yourself and to your team and to your clients. And keep going with the process. But you're right. It is fascinating. People do get stuck. And I think just breaking through that wall, whether it's through pure determination or getting creative, but you gotta get some confidence there first. That's going to help above anything.
Well, how would you tell somebody to gain confidence if they're trying to figure out whether, and they feel stuck and you're saying, okay, you got to gain some confidence, and you say, show up for yourself. What advice would you give them to help them break through that wall of resistance that they're facing?
Yeah, I mean, you could work the problem backwards. So like, where do you want to go, and start working the steps backwards, and even use AI to help you with that. And then come up with, all right, based on where I want to be and where I'm stuck. The key here is if you are stuck in a bottleneck, that's actually where you should be spending most of your time every day to free up that bottleneck. And sometimes this is harsh, but we as the founder, we are the bottleneck. And you have to check that ego and recognize it's like, am I the one getting in the way of my business going to the next level? Maybe you need to hire a CEO, right? Or maybe you need to hire someone that's better at sales than you are. Or maybe you need to hire someone that's better at technical analysis or whatever it is that you do. So again, being honest with yourself, right? Realizing where the bottleneck is, and then making sure every day you're focused on making that bottleneck wider and letting things flow. And then, another thing my coach will say is the bigger the business, the bigger the problems. You have to recognize that's the name of the game. I mean, that's what we've traded for our autonomy and freedom and the ability to build what we want. We have to recognize you're always going to have problems. They're never going to go away. Yep. And you have to get comfortable with that. And, when a big problem comes your way that you never had before, recognize that means your business is bigger.
Absolutely. So I want to shift gears a little bit. Before I do, friends, because Jake is in the financial securities industry, this next part of the answer is just for educational purposes only. He's not giving investment advice. I need to do this to protect the innocent. We do this with CPAs and attorneys as well. But, I want to bring these top caliber guests on who are in the trenches and are helping Deca millionaires and those striving to be Deca millionaires every day. And so you've got to give a little bit of grace as they answer some of these a little bit more tough questions. But Jake, as tactically as we can, given your knowledge and experience, one of the things I'm seeing is that business owners specifically don't realize the amount of money they're going to need in order to maintain their lifestyle. And so my root question is what's a good guide that a business owner can use to try to determine what that nut needs to be? Now, as you're thinking about that answer and tactically wording it for compliance and all those other fun things we have to deal with, oftentimes what I see is that business owners, let's say they pay themselves $20,000 a month, which is the standard that many service-based business owners try to achieve. $250,000 a year is great income, above average income. Then they're running expenses through their company, maybe their truck, maybe their vacation, maybe their kids, insurance, various things through the company. And before you know it, they're making $400,000 as a mean average for successful service-based business owners. They build their companies up and now they get ready to exit and the company's valued at X, and they realize now after talking with someone like yourself that they just don't have enough assets after the business broker gets their cut, after the attorneys get their cut, after the IRS gets its cut. They realize now they just don't have enough money to maintain that current standard of living. And so they end up going back to work and they run their business to the ground. And now they have this short-term mindset that is really sad to me. So Jake, to the root question is how might a business owner determine what that amount of money they need to be shooting for, what the value of their company that maybe they need to have is for them to exit?
This is really good. I'm glad you bring this up on your show. I would argue that business owners are some of the hardest people to plan for and some of the people that need it the most because of exactly what you just detailed out, because I'm a business owner, right? And you are too. So I understand my financial plan is far more complex than a client of mine that may be a vice president at a publicly traded company. Now, they have their own nuances and strategies that we need to talk about, but the business owner doesn't typically understand. You're right, because we're running things through the business and taxes are different. And many times they dump money back into their business thinking that's the smartest thing to do. So one piece of advice I would have is as a business owner, you need to treat yourself like an employee, not the way you pay yourself, but you need to make sure that you're maxing out your retirement accounts so that when you go to have a liquidity event, that you've got some sort of backup plan if the valuation isn't what you think it could or should be. And so that's where I like to start with my business owners is hey, let's get a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, a 401k, whatever options you have based on the structure of your business. You've got to make sure you're putting money into that every year and maxing that out. And then we'll run that into the financial plan. And then I think a business owner, ultimately, you should be running a business to optimize that valuation for that liquidity event one day. So you could think you have the best ice cream shop in the world, but if your margins are crappy and you're paying your kids below market rate, well, then now next thing you know, your business isn't worth that much or anything. So you have to start optimizing your business early, far earlier than you want to sell it. But to answer your question, 500,000, I mean, again, I'd have to crunch the numbers, but I don't believe in the 4% withdrawal rule, but a lot of advisors do. But that's easy math, right? So you've got to have 10 million bucks to generate 400 grand a year. But again, I think financial planning is way more complex than that with taxes and investments and target rate of returns. But my point is, a business owner needs a planner more than probably your typical corporate employee. And you should start planning for that liquidation years ahead of time. Even me, I'm 43. I don't want to sell my company anytime soon, but I already know what I'm optimizing for today and what I need to optimize when I want to sell this so that at least we can drift in that direction. We might not speed that way, but we can drift in that direction. I don't know. That's a long-winded answer, but it's a really good question and a good point.
Yeah. I think the way you answered is apropos to the circumstances that I've seen. And I've walked literally hundreds of business owners to rapidly grow the value of the company. And they've really never thought about their financial fitness in terms of what it's going to take. So friends, I can say this, Jake probably can't, but you need to hire a financial planner, period. Yeah. Get your financial planner. Somebody can crunch the numbers. He used the rule of 4. We can argue and disagree and agree on different numbers there. But basically, the reason why we call this Decamillionaire Decoded is because the number is often a lot more than what you and I think. So if you're a business owner, what Jake just said is paramount. So again, friends, I have nothing to gain other than say you need a good financial planner who understands business. So with that being said, have you personally seen a correlation? You mentioned earlier, and I wrote it down, fitness. This idea around keeping your body healthy, keeping your mind. Dan Martell is somebody that you and I both aspire to, his influence in the business community. He often says, tire the body, tame the mind is one of, I think, the way he says it. So have you seen this correlation between a business owner's mental, physical resilience to their success? Have you ever seen that before from your lens?
I'm noticing it far more now than I did before because Dan shed a light on that. I never really thought about that before, but even me personally, like because of, I think I hired him, it's probably only been 5 or 6 months, but I'm exercising a lot more with intention before, and I am able to handle far more stress at my company because my body is in better shape. And so I don't know. I'd be curious to know because I know there's also a lot of unhealthy, successful people out there too. So I don't really know. I just know what works for me is that being healthier, I have more energy. I'm more present at my company, for my team, for my clients. And then when I get home, to be present with my wife. And so I don't know what bad comes from exercising, right? So I think finding time, especially if you're a business owner, that's one of the reasons that we are business owners, that we can control our schedules, is making sure that you're finding time to live a healthy lifestyle so that you can show up 100% for whatever it is you're doing.
Well, you just mentioned your family, and I got to believe that just backwards engineering the size of your practice now in terms of activity, in terms of responsibility you're dealing with, the number of clients you mentioned, that's a heavy load as the CEO. So how are you balancing, and I don't like that term because I don't think there's such thing as a balanced life personally, but how are you successfully navigating the work and friends and faith and fitness and all? How are you navigating that to keep your family at the priority level that I know you desire to keep them at?
Yeah, I'm big into time blocking. And so again, I've got an executive assistant who's fantastic. She's screening my emails and she's managing my calendar. And then my wife and I started, this was before I hired Dan. This was another coach I had. Her and I do a weekly check-in on Sundays and she's a business owner too, right? So imagine that, 2 business owners. So we're going over our week together every day by day. What are we doing? Not like, I don't tell her every client meeting I'm having. I'm like, oh, it's a normal day. I've got client meetings. But what are we doing in the evening? Then we schedule times that we want to be, whether we want to go to a museum or out to dinner or vacations or whatever, but her and I are getting aligned on that Sunday. And I really am selfish with my Sundays. It's typically a hard no on Sundays, unless it's something that I just can't say no to. But 9 times out of 10, it's no. I'm with my wife and I'm at home. I'm recharging for the week. And then the rest of the week, it's kind of free game. But so you have to, my other coach said it's a positive no. So you're saying yes to yourself first and to your faith, whether you go to church on Sundays or your family or whatever it is, you have to say yes to that first before you can say yes to somebody else. So if there's no other room on that Sunday, it's a no. It's like, no, I can't do it today. I'm already committed, but I can do it on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. So, but you have to be positive and you have to check in with yourself. And having that bit of control also makes me feel not so spread so thin that many people feel, because I know that I've got that ace in the hole. Like, you know what? Sunday's my day. I don't have to worry about it. I can recharge.
So the same thing with my wife and I. We've done this since my first coach 20 years ago. Is Sundays is my day. We go to church in the morning time, and then Sunday afternoons we literally, if we can sit on the back swing and watch, live in the country on a farm. We can watch the chickens play or whatever. Emily and my wife and I just sit back and just talk. And one of the things I've learned is that during that time, it's protected. It's like sacred for us as husband and wife, as my partner in this life. And we have a lot of interesting conversations. So I guess my question for you is, being you and your wife, who's also a business owner, that is some complexity to the equation. The two of you, what have you seen out of your relationship with your spouse that other business owners are avoiding? For maybe the question we better ask, what important conversations should we as business owners be having with our significant other or our spouse that we're just avoiding to have that could help us achieve whatever we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, she gets aligned with my goals for my business, and I get aligned with hers. So we both talk about what are we working on, what fires or what problems are we solving, and where do we want to go next. And I'm sure with your wife, the good news is all I got to do really is listen. being a guy, I always want to solve the problem for her and talk. But in the end, 9 times out of 10, Justin, she just wants me to listen. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and we love to go on walks together. She's a big walker. And so we talk a lot about it on walks, and I just sit there back there and listen and listen to what's on her brain, and what's going on with her. But you can't get that Monday through Friday. You just don't. I don't care if your spouse stays at home and you have kids and whatever. You don't get that because you got a million other things going on. And so that time to reflect and embrace and, recognize that you guys are in this together. Like you said, it's a partnership, and she helps me out with my business a ton. And, I started this before I met her. But I've told her that she helped me get it to where it's at today. Granted, I already had a running start, but the stuff I bounce off of her, she's helping form my company, even though she's not directly involved at all. Right. Right. She has a magazine company. I have a financial, we're completely different industries, but we're able to help each other because of that.
So I have one more question for you before we kind of bring this plane to the ground, but no doubt you've seen success, Jake. You've seen business owners that you had the privilege of serving. They've reached success. And maybe you can pull this from your own life, or maybe you can pull it from some of those you've had the privilege to walk through this with. But how do you stay motivated? And let me expound on that question a little bit further. The level of success that you and your wife have achieved and the level of success you see other business owners achieve, there comes a certain point where some have the tendency to kind of sit back and coast. I'm not gathering that's where you're at in this phase of life. In fact, you have this vision. I can almost hear it through your voice. You have this vision that you still want to drive forward to whatever that destination is you have. But so as you continue to gain experience, gain knowledge, gain wisdom, gain wealth through all these various things, how do you stay motivated to continue to grasp that next rung of the ladder?
I actually talked about this with my team last Friday in our team meeting. It's the 6 words, and you've probably heard this, but maybe not. Feels like play, looks like work. And I told you, I am playing an infinite game. And there's actually a book out there. Another coach told me about this book called Infinite Game. I think it's by James Carse. And if any one of your audience can tell me what the heck this book means, I would love it. Because it's so complicated to read this book, believe it or not. It's like reading poetry. It's so weird to me. And I don't really get poetry that well. I think it's beautiful. So my coach, his name is Rand Stagen. This is another coach I had. He's out of Dallas. He argues it's the best book he's ever read. So I was like, well, if my coach says it's the best book, I'm going to read it. But this thing is so whacked out. You want to talk about smoking crack, but there's so many profound bits of wisdom in this book. But to simplify it, I told this to my team. I'm playing a game, and not that I think this is funny. It's serious to me because it's my life, and when I'm spending hours and hours and hours of my life. But it's an infinite game. There is no end, and I'm competing against myself to be a better version of myself. And I don't need motivation for that, for whatever. Maybe I'm just weird, but I don't need motivation for that because I am just trying to make my body healthier, my business better. I'm trying to be a better husband, a better golfer, whatever game I'm playing, I'm trying to make it better. And that's what's fun about life for me. And I don't need any motivation for that. It's kind of why I'm here. And another one, I guess his name's Mark Mason, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Yep. He
He says activity inspires motivation. I think that's where a lot of people get lost, is just get up and get to work and do it. If you're trying to get motivated to work out, set your alarm 30 minutes earlier and get up out of bed and go work out.
Yeah.
right? And go for a walk, ride a bike, do push-ups, whatever. That activity will then fuel your motivation. And so to me, it's a game. Whatever I'm currently doing, I'm trying to get better at it. And that's what motivates me.
Exactly. And what's interesting to me is I know the heart you're coming from, but you and I have also seen the opposite side of that, where the horizon's always moving. And we have those individuals who it becomes a game, but it becomes a game to their own detriment, to where, they move into obsessivism, right? It's like enough's never enough. And they end up losing faith, family, friends, fitness, finance. They lose something because they don't have a balance. So, you and I've seen the horror stories around business owners who, because of the game, they like the game so much, end up losing everything else. How does one prevent themselves from falling in love with the game for the game's sake, in order to take a step back and keep that impact or that monumental life mission that they might have?
Yeah, good one. Good point. So to me, it goes back to your values and your purpose, right? So you've got to check in with that before you play the game, right? Why are you doing this? And maybe, though, some of those people, this is sad to say, maybe they shouldn't be married. If their purpose is only their company, they probably shouldn't be married, right? I would argue Tiger Woods never should have gotten married, right? But he's got great children, and that's good. But I mean, that's a prime example of, like, why would he ever get married? He was so focused on the game of golf and being the number one in the world. He had no business trying to have a wife and have a normal life. That's not what he was after. Now, maybe he could get married again now. Things have changed, but when he got married is my point. So I think you got to check in. And so I think a good exercise that Stagen did with me is that I listed out all the things that I valued. And then I literally wrote out like 5 different statements of why these things were valuable to me. And then I kept condensing it. And today, and your purpose can change, again, based on what phase of life you're in. Today, my purpose is inspiring others to live a happy and healthy life. And that is my North Star. And everything I do, if I can point to that, it's good. But I want to have a wife and hopefully a family one day. And like, I do believe, I do have faith and strong faith. Like, those things are fundamental for me. So the game, I won't let the game that I'm playing in business or golf or whatever overcome those, because the reason I'm playing the game are because of my foundation. And so you've got to have a strong foundation before you start playing the game, and recognize what are you doing what you're doing.
So with that purpose of inspiring others to live a happy and healthy life, there are thousands of people listening to us right now through the podcast and throughout social media and everything else. As you're inspiring others, and we bring this podcast to a close, what inspiration would you leave this audience? Those business owners who are in the grind, they're actively trying to scale. Maybe they've already reached decamillionaire status and now they're trying to go to the next level, whatever that is for them. Maybe they just now getting this wake up call, like, holy cow, I've worked for 20 years. I'm know where I need to be and I need to press forward. So Jake, you've got this audience of a broad array of business owners who are listening to you. What inspiration would you give them as we bring this podcast to a close?
That's a lot of pressure. That's good. But I would say just check in and enjoy the daily process, enjoy your daily work, and have appreciation and gratitude for what you get to do every day, not what you have to do. So if you go into your day and your life, I get to do whatever it is you're doing. Maybe you're picking up trash a day, whatever it is. I get to pick up trash instead of I have to. Try to have that outlook, change your perspective, gratitude, and just enjoy. Even if we all have goals and we have a vision and whatever, enjoy where you are today. Enjoy the work, because that is life, is what you're experiencing right now today. This is life. And that's what I would really challenge people to appreciate and explore that. My favorite book is Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. That's my favorite book of all time. And he talks a lot about that. So if you're feeling lost, I would highly encourage your audience to read that one. It's about bringing it back to this moment right now and what we have in front of us.
Jake, I love that statement. This is life. Three simple words.
Yeah.
3 simple words that oftentimes we get lost. Jake, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with the audience today. Thank you so much.
Justin, it was my pleasure. It's such a fun conversation. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. So credit to you and having a great show. So thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. So friends, this is life. That is a powerful statement Jake just shared with us. We're going to put a link to all of Jake's contact information, his website, even the book he has in the show notes. If you're looking for a seasoned experienced advisor that can help you walk through this pathway to Decamillionaire status, especially if you're in the Kansas City area. You've just heard from a master. You've heard from somebody who has walked this path themselves, achieved a monumental status in a very complex world. I can backwards engineer the numbers and tell you that Jake and his team is highly successful. You don't reach the level that he and his team are playing at without some adversity, but also some tenacity. And so I can't thank Jake enough for coming on the show. Friends, look, as we say oftentimes, life is hard. It is, but reaching a Decamillionaire status is just a number. It's a game. It's life. This is life. Set your sights forward, friends. Charge hell with a water pistol, and we'll see you on the next episode. Y'all make it a great day.